go into the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, which is going to talk about the All-Star Game. And another takeaway that I have from this game is that, again, Doc Rivers should be really, really upset at Damian Lillard right now, because Damian Lillard was shooting the lights out in this All-Star Game. And one of the most popular clips of the All-Star Game was him hitting 2 half-court shots, literally like from past half court, and draining it like it was nothing. So if I was Doc Rivers, I would be really upset at Dame, because like, how is it that you're so confident here but you can't hit shots in the regular season? Like, come on. We need that kind of talk. But regardless, he ended the game with the All-Star Game MVP as well, scoring the most points on the Eastern Conference with 39 points on 14 of 26. Jaylen Brown also showed up in this game with 36 points, as well as Tyrese Halliburton with 32. On the West, Karl Anthony Towns had 50 points, and obviously that's very impressive. I mean, 50 points on any given night is really good. Shai Gilgeous had 31. And the rest of the All-Star starters for the West were really inefficient. Kevin Durant had 18. Steph had 16 for 6 for 17. Devin Booker had 15. LeBron James only had 8 points. And obviously, like, again, this game, this All-Star game, it's very boring a lot of these years. And it lacks a competitive aspect that a lot of the previous All-Star games have had. And on top of that, when you add on the fact that there's like no defense played in this league, it gets even more boring. Like, it was just the game was just people throwing up a bunch of 3-pointers and doing a bunch of alley-oops, like I said it was going to be. But excuse me, again, the defense, it wasn't there, and it wasn't something that like anybody wanted to look at. Like, it was dull. It was really, really dull, and it's really difficult to talk about. I'm not even gonna lie, because there wasn't much to really talk about in this game. I mean, there were people that were scoring a bunch, but again, it was like the lanes were wide open. When you did one move, you went right past the defender, and they left you open every single time to shoot the ball. So, obviously, the defense was really bad. The Eastern All-Stars ended up scoring 211 points. That's the first time that any team has ever scored 200 points in any NBA game ever, All-Star game or not. And obviously, like, you know, the defense is really bad, given how like they let up so many points, and most of them came from 3-pointers from the Eastern All-Stars. Like, again, I understand it's about having fun for all of these players. They play a lot of these games, and a lot of it is stressful. Draymond Green said it on his podcast at one point, that he said a lot of these games, he doesn't like basketball as like work per se. Like, he loves competing, he loves playing basketball, but doing it as a job all the time is ridiculous work. And obviously, like, it's good at times to like be able to relax and not have the media on you 24/7 with how you play. But at the same time, when you're an NBA player like that, the media is going to be on you regardless of what you do, no matter what you do. Just look at players like LeBron. He builds a school, and the media is already on him. So every little thing that you do, you need to expect the media to pay attention to what you're doing. So using that as an argument to like not be competitive in the All-Star game is sort of like, I don't think that's a valid excuse, because a lot of the media is going to criticize you for not being competitive in these games anyway, which is what the media is doing right now with a lot of these players, given how this All-Star game, it was relatively weak. And another thing that like really bugged me was that they didn't use the court. They didn't use the NBA court, that the LED court that they showed off for the All-Star for the 3-point competition and for the the Rising Stars game. They didn't end up using that for the All-Star game. And I'm like, why? Why didn't they end up using that for All-Star game? That would have been a great inclusion to have. Like, it would have made the game a little bit more interesting. Just imagine if LeBron were to do one of his signature dunks, and at the center court you see King James just pop up mid-court, and like that would be so cool. And I don't understand why they had to go back to like the original hardwood floors. Like I guess it's sort of like because like, oh, these NBA players, they're used to playing on hardwood floors, but who cares? It's the All-Star game. It's not like they're playing seriously anyway. So I just thought that was incredibly weak. Like, it just made it a lot more boring, in my opinion, because the All-Star game is already boring as it is, and you need to I thought that's why they implemented the court, so that way it would be a little less boring. And having Draymond Green on the microphone as well, commenting on the All-Star game, that was really satisfying. If you listen in, he said, this is Cat on old Minnesota. He's got 40 points and they're down by 20, which was pretty funny because, obviously Draymond can crack a lot of jokes that a lot of analysts wouldn't dare to do live. But again, like the critics of this game, like it says that there was a lot to be desired. A lot of them really weren't pleased with how this game and the results of this game ended up. And not really much to talk about, like, with the All-Star game itself, and it's really just dull. It's just dull now, and it's like a lot of people are deciding on like whether to remove the All-Star game completely, given how like nobody wants to run back and forth down the court. Maybe if they replaced it with half-court sets in several different games, that would be a little bit more interesting. A lot of people would tune into that, and a lot of basketball players, they take pickup games a lot more. They take pickup basketball a lot more seriously than they would a regular game, especially an All-Star game, because pickup basketball is like, I mean, there's a lot of core memories that come from pickup basketball. A lot of these players, like, they grow up playing pickup basketball. It's one of the most relatable things in basketball, playing a pickup game. And if they have a format like that, I feel like a lot more players would take that format a little bit more seriously. However, obviously, like, with these All-Star games and the mentality of, like, how players, they spend every single time playing every game 100%, it does feel good to let loose a little bit in some competitions and not really play 100%, given how, again, every single game, every fan expects them to play 100%, especially in games that matter in the regular season. So, a lot of casual talk around this game, around the basketball, however, is the fact that there is no defense being played in some of these games. And having no defense in All-Star game, which is one of the most popular events in any type of sport, showing that there's no defense, it was like watching a game that casuals think the NBA actually is. It's like, if you were a regular basketball fan, this is a game that like a casual sports fan would think an NBA game actually is. Just no defense, allowing 3-point shots, a lot of teams taking 3-pointers, and a lot of players just not putting enough effort out there. And that's sort of that stipulation of not playing defense and not giving enough effort, they're one and the same. Because not giving enough effort, it's like, I understand how like the logic and the thinking behind it is that, like, well, the player needs to have enough energy to be able to run the offense given how much he has the ball in his hands. Like, for example, with Luka and his defense, it makes sense for Luka to be a little bit lazy because he's expected to have the ball on offense every single time. He had a game scoring 70 points. But again, that's not winning basketball if you're just not playing defense, because what if the other team is making shots and you aren't? Like, that's the aspect of the game that a lot of people aren't thinking. Like, obviously you don't want to put in the mind of your best player, oh, you could miss this shot. But again, like, that's still a possibility, especially with like the degree of difficulty that these players, like, that the shots are with some of these players. it's not really easy to say that like, oh, they'll make the shot like all the time. But there was no defense and no touching each other, and it was barely entertaining. Like, obviously, like, I understand, like, there's no hand checking in the NBA regardless, but it's like, at least try to put a body on someone. But no one was boxing out either, and they've been trying to do things to make it entertaining, but it just hasn't been entertaining whatsoever. And maybe it should have some events that are scripted, because again, like I said previously, a lot of these games, like, they don't matter. It's really difficult to make a game less boring if the games don't matter. But a team that does that phenomenally well is actually the Harlem Globetrotters. Like, I mean, obviously, like, the Harlem Globetrotters, they're entertainers, so that's their job, but they play a lot of games, a lot of basketball games that aren't necessarily, like, they don't count for anything. They're just there for entertainment. And they have a lot of scripted segments in these in the games. They have like triple lobs, like 10-man lobs, all those types of lobs, and they have certain players do tricks that we don't really see before, that we don't really see on a basketball court. So doing things like that might bring a lot more entertainment to the game. I'm not saying like have the entire game scripted, but like have certain segments where it's like, oh, this player's doing something that we haven't seen. Like, I remember in one All-Star game, Kyrie Irving, like, he did a fake behind the back in when the camera was like close up on him, and that's something that we've never seen before. Those types of things will drag people into watching these games, doing things that players haven't seen before. And that's sort of like the only important things that like to really talk about in this All-Star game. Again, there's not much to really talk about because of how not competitive this game really was. It wasn't competitive. There's not much I can really say. So with that, I will go ahead and go into the third segment after this short break, where I go ahead and talk about the dunk contest and how disappointing that dunk contest was as well. So stay tuned for that after this short break.